So, hello and welcome to the Rippling Pages. This is the podcast where we have a coffee with the world's most interesting writers to inspire your reading and your writing. Now, have you ever walked past an old abandoned house and wondered what kind of lives will live there? Have you ever dared to explore one? Perhaps you wanted to escape and hide in the house, or perhaps you wanted to use it for something a little more nefarious. These are the questions at the heart of Leon Craig's novel, The Decadence, published by Sceptre. When a group of friends want to escape the boredom of lockdown by getting high, they chance upon Holt's house, but they get a little more than they bargained for. Not only are the demons from previous relationships coming back to haunt them, but also those that might be occupying the house. Leon Craig, whose previous collection of short stories, Parallel Hells, was also published by Sceptre. But Leon is also a graduate of the Birkbeck MFA Creative Writing course. Her work has been published by Hazlitt, the Sunday Times, the London magazines, and others, and many others actually, with work forthcoming in Nulla magazine and Berlin Babel anthology. Leon, thank you very much for joining me on the Ripping Pages.
Thank you so much for having me on Rippling Pages, Liam. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm very delighted to have you here. We actually, well, the reason you are, well, it's not the only reason that you're here. We're very happy to have you here. But we put a call out on Instagram, and I asked Instagram who they thought the rising literary stars were, and the name that came back was Leon Craig. So I had to get you on the show.
Well, that is very gratifying. And yes, let us talk all things dark, crumbling, and mansion-like.
Dark, crumbling, and mansion-like sounds like a bit like the rubbish cakes that I make. But I am very excited to have you. Very excited to have you, and I think that's great. The Ripping Pages listeners obviously have great taste. You are talking of dark. I think Berlin that you're based.
That's right. I am in Berlin, where winter lasts for 6 months of the year.
It's
It's
gracious.
got a sort of Persephone Hades thing going on. I mean, we're just coming to the end of over a month of snow, which starts out like delightful and romantic and ends as sludgy and annoying.
Well, we've just had constant rain here, but I hope it's not too cold and yeah, you're able to sort of stay safe. Well, thanks for coming. I'm delighted to have you, and I'm really excited to get into the dark, the crumbling, and the mansion like for sure. Just before we get going, do remember to like, share, follow, leave a 5-star review of the Ripping Pages if you enjoy this episode or any other episode. It really does help the show grow. But otherwise, it's just great to hear from you as well. Shall we get into it, Leon? And shall we
Absolutely.
talk about this house? Talk about this crumbling mansion. Because we arrive there, the book is about this house, and there's a lot of characters in this book. It's an ensemble kind of cast. But while this, and I don't really like this cliche, but the house does feel like a character in its own right, perhaps because it does feel a little bit alive and animated. Can you just tell us about Holt House, if you don't mind?
Gladly. So the book starts and ends with a view of the house, and parts of the house are 800 years old, and it's owned by the Mortimer family. We arrive at the house when Theo Mortimer, the protagonist, Jan Rubin's close friend, is in possession of it, and he has not really taken great care of it. I mean, it's been in his possession for a while, but he's been living the life of Riley in London as a kind of small-time drug dealer, playboy, doing what he likes. So he only really goes there for the occasional bender with his girlfriend Nadia, who is the daughter of a Russian oligarch, and also Jan's secret on and off again lover.
So yeah, there's inheritance. We've got a Russian oligarch. There is the sense of, well, it is the decadence, isn't it? So why did you choose then to put these characters in that particular house?
I think what I was doing there is that each of the characters has their own quite complicated sort of social position, particularly in relation to one another. So, for instance, Theo has the lineage. The Mortimer family stretches back to at least the Crusades. Like they're very much a known quantity, but they don't really have that much money anymore. I mean, they've got the sort of, the prestige and the name to stay out of trouble and the connections, but he's not exactly rolling in it. Whereas Nadia is in some ways incredibly privileged. Her family made a lot of money just after the fall of the Soviet Union, but her father is quite tyrannical and a bit shady, and he kind of really wants Nadia to move back to Switzerland with the rest of the family where he's keeping them. And now, Nadia's sort of torn between wanting to be free and enjoy herself and kind of wanting to lead the life that she was supposed to lead. And her visa is running out. So, Theo is potentially an answer to that problem. Whereas Jan went to this very fancy school with Nadia, but as a scholarship girl, and she kind of knows how to comport herself around these people, but she definitely isn't one of them, and is also kind of marked out by her Jewish heritage as kind of an outsider, but at the same time has a different relationship to it than, for instance, Ursi, whose family are West Indian. Ursi's grandparents came over in the 60s, and Ursi is like very much like a proud working class Black Londoner and inhabits that identity and is kind of not necessarily very at ease in the house.
Wow, there's a lot in there, isn't there? Then so class, heritage, ancestry, uh,
Exactly.
race, ethnicity, culture. Was there a particular person that came first?
I mean, this novel has been sort of Germany. Well, it was with me for a very long time. And I knew that it would be about a dysfunctional group of friends who would end up betraying each other. And I think the betrayal and the power games came first, perhaps before any of them were fully individuated. And after a while, I started realizing, okay, I need to keep them all in the same place. Like I have to trap them here somehow. And at the same time, I was getting more and more interested in country house novels as this sort of very recherche genre.
So we put them into the house. What starts happening to them when they arrive? We it's not a spoiler that there's a haunting of sorts, but what happens in some of those early stages of the novel?
Well, in some of those early stages, the haunting is present but more deniable. So, for instance, like Ursi's things get messed around with, and initially it's not clear whether someone is like from the group is like going through her stuff to unsettle her or to try and rob her. And I think on the first night, all of the pictures in the frames in Jan's room are like turned around to face away from her, and she's like, maybe this is just Theo trying to psych me out. And then you kind of realize as the haunting gets more and more palpable and the ghost is getting more angry and more intent on making its presence known, that like it's not so deniable anymore.
Mm. And is there, thinking about plotting it then, and thinking about what does happen, how did you make those? I don't know if you could just tell me a little bit more about that, some of the plot points that you put in.
I knew that I wanted it to take place over a kind of limited period of time. And it's very influenced by Boccaccio's The Decameron, which has 10 noble Florentines fleeing a plague. And initially, drafts of this did have 10 characters, and I whittled it down and whittled it down because I was like, no, I want to give them more character development
Mhm.
than they're otherwise going to get. And so the time, and it also then shrank from 10 days into five. So instead, it takes most of the action takes place over the course of 5 days as their antics get more and more debauched, and also as the ghost gets more and more intent on making its presence known. And Jan has been asked to cater everything in exchange for as many drugs as she wants over the course of the weekend. Jan is very highly strung and, like, despite really loving food and sex, is more or less incapable of enjoying herself without making it complicated. Um, so she's prepared this very luxe picnic and then is very distressed to find that actually Theo has used it as a set piece in order to propose to Nadia and solve her visa issues and get himself this presentable wife. And Janet's like, what? Like Nadia and I are like in the middle of having this like horrible affair with each other. Like she can't get married now. That like wasn't in any of the plans.
But it is
Uh,
scary. It's scary. It's a scary novel. It's freaky and but there are these moments of like sheer misunderstanding, and there's comedy to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I kind of wanted that to be true to life, which is that like even when stuff is going really, really wrong for you, like there probably is some humor in it. Like there's a lot of really sort of snarky bits about Jan is like absorbing the fact that Theo has just proposed to Nadia. And she's also, but she's still kind of irritated that Kara is fooling around with this really expensive camera that she's got no idea how to use.
Yeah.
And you can see Ursi also walking back with them, who really wants to gossip about what's just happened and like is barely holding it in.
Yes.
Because I mean, like your friends are like that.
What was putting this group together? Was there a sense of I'm going to have some fun with them?
I feel almost bad for them for how much fun I've had with
All
them.
right.
I mean, I think part of it is that they all really set each other off. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't necessarily want to have any of them being right about anything all the time or wrong about anything all the time. So even Kara, who's one of the people, one of the characters who I've been told people find the most irritating, she also has some moments of actually being correct about some of the bullshit that Jan says, and
Yeah.
like makes them, and she also makes some solid points. But like she's very sanctimonious, like she doesn't live up to her own ideals, and she makes everyone else suffer for that. I think it's quite important to have a protagonist who is very imperfect themselves.
No one likes that. I mean, well, actually, there's a question then. Does is it about the reader embracing these imperfections? Because there are some pretty wild imperfections in this group.
Yeah, there are some pretty wild imperfections. I mean, taking, for instance, Jan, like you could argue that it is quite twisted to continue this affair with Nadia behind the
Yeah.
back of her friend. I mean, the affair pre-exists, Theo. Like they've been sleeping with each other on and off since school, but like it's bloomed into cheating, and also in addition to having the connection that they do, they also still kind of hate each other. Like there's
Mm.
something very perverse about that. And I think I haven't shied away from showing just how perverse it is, even in Jan's mind. So, I think at moments it is hard to tolerate. I think even Jan is struggling to tolerate herself, to be honest.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about Nadia, because it under Nadia and Jan, because it does underpin everything that's happening here.
Theirs is the oldest friendship in the novel, and they started out as teenagers as genuinely friends, and then it kind of morphed into something sexual, which Nadia refuses to talk about because she's grown up in this like very homophobic environment. And as the affair goes on, it also becomes more and more sadomasochistic, with Nadia having kind of almost complete emotional control over Jan, and Jan kind of enjoying it, but also kind of resenting it, but not able to find that particular blend of sort of satisfaction and terror anywhere else. So that's always in the background. And they're also sneaking off to have these assignations. So part of why Jan agrees to come on this terrible holiday is that she thinks, oh, somewhere like that, like I will be able to meet up with Nadia behind Theo's back because, in the pandemic, it's much harder for them to sneak around and meet up. But they're, even though they're in this really big house with all these out of the way rooms, it's not clear necessarily who knows what and how much they know. There's also the ghost in the offing. And Jan is being watched very closely by Ursi, who is like another of her former lovers, who has some opinions about Jan's behavior.
It's an interesting it's an interesting choice for them to sort of carry on this illicit affair. But I love the set piece of it, of them trying to hide away and get away. And it's a perfect setting for it, isn't it? In a house like this. And you can do that, can't you? You can do that, you can control that.
I mean, the house just offers so many opportunities. So, for instance, I really love a secret passageway, and the need to meet up with each other keeps propelling Jan up into the attic of the house. And as you kind of get further into the book, you realize quite how much of the house has been cawed out by previous generations of Mortimers who've got more and more paranoid and insane. And like, Jan is using this for some sexual reasons, but there are a lot of other much darker reasons why the Mortimers have decided to do
Mm.
that. Um,
But the secret passageway, what does it offer? What does it offer the characters? What does it offer you as a writer?
I think it offers you the ability for voyeurism, which is important. I mean, both in novels in general, because novels
Mm.
make a voyeur of you, but also in novels that are about power and secrets. It offers like a really potent kind of concretization of what
Mm.
everybody's doing to each other.
I mean, it's interesting. It's like watching The Traitors. You get those tasks where they have suddenly the bookcase revolves and there's a secret room or a secret passageway. There is something completely compelling about hidden passageway and only people having access to it. But there are Nadia and Jan, they are it seems like these are an important pair for you to speak quite a lot about desire. What's the relationship between all of these elements? Is there a relationship, or is it something that you just sort of found in the writing that you were sort of drawn to?
I really like this question because um, I actually had I hadn't put it together before now in the way that you mention it, but I remember a friend of mine who was read several early drafts said, you know, Jan has this very distinctive relationship between danger and pleasure, where it's like almost hard for her to enjoy herself unless there's an enormous amount at stake. Like basically, the discard um almost being kind of psychologically annihilated by Nadia, but also risking a huge amount for Nadia as well because of her visa situation. And then as the book goes on, you realize that they're also actually putting themselves in quite considerable kind of physical slash metaphysical, depending on how you see it, danger with the ghost. So I think also, when we have this very desire-driven encounter, it's not just about this person looks really good, I want to sleep with them. It's also about kind of all of our unmet needs and hopes and fears, both into the future and that we're bringing with us from the past. And I think that's a very rich territory for ghosts. I mean, I think there is also a quite sexual element to the haunting, because when we go back further in, because we start to understand more about the past the further we go into the novel, and you start to realize that a lot of the bad stuff the Mortimers has done is very based in greed and also lust, and you see that the further back you go, and also the way that the ghost starts to behave has an element of real sexual threat in it. And this has been misinterpreted by one critic as sort of having a consensual element, and it is very much not consensual.
Well, let's just talk about that. Let's just talk about the role of the ghost, shall we?
There may be some ghosts that theoretically you could give consent to. That particular ghost and that particular living character, I think it is vanishingly unlikely, not least because the moment at which the ghost and Jan do make contact in that way comes at the end of this sort of 10-page interlude where she has sort of gone deep into the heart of the house, like historically, and seen just how evil and depraved the house is, and also specifically that ghost, and the repulsion that he has towards her and any of the other kind of like ethnically differentiated characters, like Ursi also included. Like there's a sense of real revulsion, but also kind of like existential and sexual threat from that ghost.
There's a sense of, and when you were talking about going further into the house, there's a sense of boundaries and the word you use was trespassing. And the whole, just thinking about this idea of trespassing, sort of pulling out the lens a little bit in terms of sex and consent, but there is a sense of the Mortimers, things that are in the house, these are how they've been appropriated. There has been trespassing preceding
That's a
the
really
whole
good
setup's
framework.
trespassing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, a lot. I mean, theft is
Yeah.
definitely at least especially in the case of the Mortimers, is very much the product of their kind of trespasses. I mean, there's there are references in the book to the sort of ships laden with tea and sugar, and the implication is that some of their money comes from plantations fueled by slave labor. I mean, some of the kind of broken Indian statuary, you're meant to wonder, so where exactly did they get that from? And it kind of ties in with Godfrey de Mortimer being a crusader, and a lot of the stuff that the crusaders got up to was also very violent and disturbing. And Jan comes across like like a brief reference to this in a chronicle that the family has proudly displayed in the house, and it's like, hang on a minute, this actually also concerns my own family history. And that kind of comes, that comes back as a theme later on in the book as well. But yeah, I mean, the trespassing is such a useful way of thinking about this because, there's the history of the house and the family, and then there's also Theo's behavior, which initially seems like he's just this really fun-loving, charismatic guy who wants everyone to have a good time, and you start to realize just how much he's manipulating everyone and how much control he has over them.
Mm. Yeah, Theo. He's inherited the house. Well, it's his family's house, isn't it? But how what does Theo represent then? Because he's a descendant, isn't he?
He definitely is a descendant, and I think there are some parts of him that kind of want to push against some of the family culture and the expectations of him, and he really wants to be liked, but he's also fundamentally quite a weak person, and the house also he's sort of both victim and perpetrator because some of the decisions that he's made that have brought the friends to that place believing the things that they believe about each other, decisions that he's made a long time ago that are still playing out, and the consequences are kind of revealed towards the end of the novel of those sort of lies, the manipulations that he's
Mm.
perpetrated. But also, he's the victim of the house because he's uniquely incapable of resisting its kind of lure and its growing hold over his mind. And so he sort of starts to become drawn in by this very malign consciousness that the house
Mm.
has of its own.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but I think you described it as a Saltburn. What is it? Did you describe? I think you have described it yourself as a Saltburn version. Saltburn.
I think a friend of mine read it and was like, "Oh yes, it's like Saltburn with lesbians and ghosts." And I was like, "I'm going to roll with that. I like that as a description."
Yeah, it has a
Um,
hook, but I think it is that charismatic, and I think the main character in Saltburn is not as malevolent as Theo is, but it's that kind of charismatic representation of this family in this old decaying house. But beneath the surface, there are insecurities and manipulative ways, even though the whole Saltburn thing is flipped and reversed. But yeah, I can see why. It's just, but it's not just Saltburn; it's this cultural idea. I think Sebastian Flight, Brideshead Revisited, even Gatsby, someone like that. Either way, charismatic, rich, upper class um, individual, and it's an enduring thing, isn't it? And we'll talk about those precedents in a moment. But what we might do now is, Leon, is we might have a quick break. Do come back. We're going to talk more about charismatic. No, well, we might do. We're going to talk about some other things as well, but we are going to talk more about hauntings and desire and Leon Craig's novel, The Decadence. Why not sign up to the Rippling Pages Patreon? For a monthly subscription, you can get access to exclusive member benefits, including Rippling Pages merchandise, first looks of next month's guest before anyone else, craft-related insights and close reads, and you will get your name read out by me and the guest of that particular episode. I mean, what could be more exciting than that? If you fancy it, why not look in the show notes? There's a link to the Patreon, and you can sign up there. Okay, let's get back into it. Let's get back to The Decadence with Leon Craig. Welcome back to the Ripple Pages. Welcome back, Leon, joining me from snowy Berlin to talk about The Decadence. Should we get back into it, Leon?
yes, let's get back into it.
Let's go. Can we talk about, if you don't mind, we've talked about hauntings, talked about desire, but I think there's an idea within this book about beauty. And I don't know, it's a word that you don't use it in very specific situations, but I don't know if there is something in there that you're trying to say about beauty, whether that's related to the setting or the characters.
I really love that you picked up on that because the bit where Jan is talking about was this the hour that she would be the most beautiful is actually kind of riffing on Beowulf because she is a medievalist by profession and inclination, and there's all this stuff in Beowulf about the hour of his greatest strength and whether it kind of comes to him at the right time to fight monsters, and I think that substitution is maybe quite unconscious because up until this point, Jan's sort of greatest currency has been being liked and being included in things and kind of being taken along for a ride. And beauty is part of that because it's kind of what keeps Nadia interested in her. and arguably some other characters as well. But it's not necessarily the only thing that she has to give. And indeed, kind of in order to survive the events of this novel, she really has to move past being desperate to be liked by everybody.
And the point you're referencing there, there is a moment after they've got together, and
Mm.
she describes herself, doesn't she? Describe, or you describe her as feeling as that would be the most beautiful she'd ever be, which is a really interesting moment.
Exactly. It's a moment of deep sadness because
Yeah,
she's
yes.
actually by herself after this assignation. And she's sort of thinking about how this privacy and secrecy of this affair is the thing that sort of really possessed her beyond just the sex itself. And also about her beauty kind of potentially being a waste because, she's not with someone who particularly cares about her well-being. They're not in a public relationship, and but she also still has this compulsion to kind of be complicit in that waste. I mean, there like a lot of the characters in this book, Janet especially, have these sort of two drives between sort of self-preservation and self-destruction, and the drives are really at war over the course of this weekend. I mean, they've both sort of come to this place to get away from the kind of extremely kind of COVID-y, depressing, deathly city and enjoy nature, enjoy the beautiful surroundings of this house, but also, to really do themselves and their livers and their relationships some damage, whether they consciously are aware of this or not.
Yeah, that is there is a lingering sadness within all of that, it sounds like. I mean, she's lost something. She can't have what she wants, I guess, can she?
She both can't have what she wants and she doesn't want what she wants.
Okay. Yeah, you spoke about that idea. She can't enjoy, she just can't enjoy what she wants either sometimes, like you said. I mean, what is that? What is this trait? What is this thing with, is this a common thing? Is it a particular aspect of Jan, or where does that come from?
I mean, I think the simple word for it is masochism, but like, I think that's also maybe an oversimplification. I think a lot of people, whether they're realizing that in a physical way or that it's purely emotional, have these sort of tendencies where they engineer situations for themselves in which they know they're going to suffer, but there's something about the quality of that suffering that is sort of appealing or necessary to them. And it's the working out of a problem or kind of holding these sort of unreachable things in tension with each other, because to actually realize them would be even more unpleasant than kind of longing for them.
Oh,
I
goodness
mean,
gracious.
imagine actually dating Nadia. It would be terrible.
I mean, that is so deep. That is on so many levels. That is so deep. And this is why it's so interesting, because it's not just a book about, and this hauntings are very close to all of these issues that we're talking about, I think. I'm not the biggest reader of, ghost stories or horror and or anything like that, but there is something about haunting, and there's something about all of these ideas that is on such a deeper level, on a deeper human level. I mean, is this the only way? Could you express some of these things in a different way to a book about ghosts and hauntings?
I mean, I think you probably could express some of these ideas without the ghost, but the ghost helpfully kind of crystallizes a lot of the problems and kind of drives them to confront each other. And also, it feels like the natural outpouring of their increasingly warped perceptions as they as they take more and more drugs over the course of the weekend. Reality does go a little bit wonky. I mean, the ghost is a ghost. It has an effect on their material world because like I've deliberately written the ghost story, but it is also very much something that they've kind of conjured up collectively between them as like an expression of their malaise, and I guess also the kind of larger malaise of the society in which they find themselves.
Yeah, I think, and that is a very specific cultural idea, isn't it? It's a psychoanalytic idea, if you don't mind me saying. But I mean, the ghost is also, misunderstandings. There's a very comic moment where there's the banging on the headboards, and they all think it's the ghost, but it's not the ghost. It's uh, a couple of people going bump in the night, isn't it? Um, on that image of beauty, because there's also a lot of foulness. I felt like there's a lot of rottenness, and perhaps it's some of the things that we've spoken about. But you seem to revel also in writing about foulness.
I mean, I read somewhere that desire and disgust are actually very closely linked in the brain, and like depending on one state of arousal, what might be disgusting in one moment is very appealing in another. And I think the two kind of offset each other because they're both intended to provoke extremely strong responses.
Yeah, and then also thinking about the fact that it's set within the pandemic and there's a plague happening. And I mean, if it wasn't, is there a comment you're making about? I mean, speaking about what we've spoken about in terms of what's in the house, is there a comment that you're trying to make about wider society?
I would say so. So, I mean, the characters are, for much of the book, relatively insulated from the well beyond them in terms of the plague. I mean, like, rather in terms of COVID. So, they worry about getting sick, but they don't get sick. There's a moment where they think they might be caught by the police for breaking lockdown orders, and it is one of the things that stops them from storming out of the house in half after they've all pissed each other off so much. But that doesn't quite crystallize as a threat because they're within this sort of walled estate and
Mm,
grounds. Um, so I think part of the commentary is about, is very much about inequality, but also they've taken those tensions inside with them because they're not equal to each other. I mean, they're still, I guess, I guess one of the most important things is that this is like it's a diverse group of people fighting each other in like a ruined, crumbling house. I mean, like that is unfortunately a fairly potent, I think, metaphor for this general state of things.
I just find it. I find the country house fascinating. Anyway, you can go back to the history of English literature, and there is someone who's tried to write about getting a country house in some form. It's so focal. Um, I mean, is the house you then working through your feelings?
I think it partly is. I mean, um, I had a lot of I had a lot of recurring nightmares about being in a very old house that was not totally dissimilar to this one and turning off an unexpected corridor and then finding that it led to more corridors and then kind of going into what was essentially like a labyrinth inside the kind of psychic heart of the house. And I would always end up getting trapped within the house. And I used to have these dreams so often when I was living in England. And they've stopped mostly now that I live in Germany. And so I think I was probably working out problem, like my own problems with understanding in the UK and who I was in the UK, and also probably more general kind of emotional problems about things that were repressed because a lot of this book is about people repressing or failing to repress things.
That is interesting. I mean, believe it or not, and this is genuine, not a word of a lie here. I don't find myself if I watch a film about something, I won't dream about it. But I had a dream about the house. I had a dream about being stuck in a house after I was reading your book late.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and I just want no word of a lie. And I always it was one of those dreams where there's presence, but you feel freaked out, but you don't see the presence sort of thing. And so the dreams disappeared after finishing the book, writing about the house.
Yes, they did. And it's funny because I'm almost nostalgic for them now. I mean, it's easy to be nostalgic for things you've left
I'm not. I'll
behind.
tell you that. I'm not nostalgic for that. I don't like scary dreams.
I also, when I was writing the book, used to walk around and around the floor plan in my mind as a kind of almost like a weird self-soothing, self-hypnosis exercise to the point where I felt like I was the ghost who haunted the house because I was sort of projecting myself into it so much. And I obviously had to stop doing that after I stopped writing it and it went away to proofread and so on. And I think you can be nostalgic for things that aren't necessarily particularly good for you.
Yeah, well, yeah, and going back to what we well discussed all along, really about these strong feelings and whether haunting relates to a ghost or being haunted. There is a sense of what is it that our desires tell us, what is it that what we want, what fills us up, what do we want more of, and what really is the thing that nourishes us. Because none of these characters are fulfilled, are they? And like I said, they don't get what they want, and despite having the resources to potentially do that, the wealthy, some of them are, but
I mean, it actually is one of the things that Ursi points out relatively early on, where it's just like you could all be happy, like you could all
mm,
fix your lives, and it's so frustrating watching you not fix them.
yeah, there are so many. Your acknowledgement section is really interesting. It's always interesting, isn't it? Acknowledgements. If you're here and you're listening and you're wanting to learn about writing, you obviously got to read the book, but you read the acknowledgements because you see the sort of the processes of who goes into a book, and if you get kind of any insights into the things that have influenced the writer. And but with your book, Leon, you're quite open in the acknowledgements about the influences, aren't you? Well, how does your relationship change then with were the books changing your relationship with your novel, or were you exploring your relationship with this kind of canon of English literature?
In the same way that the house is built from lots of different people's contributions to it, like in the novel, I think the world of the novel is also built by all the different reading. And I got to the end, and I was like, this feels remiss actually not to explore what it was that I was doing here, because I wouldn't say that it was like that it was a pastiche. I think there's actually too much like very specific weirdness in the book that is not present in its sort of literary antecedents, but also it is pretty explicitly in relation to those antecedents. So, for instance, some of the things that get brought up, Helen Oyeyemi's White is for witching, which also, in which the house is also very hungry and frankly extremely sort of xenophobic and racist. And also House of Leaves because of the ideas that Mark Danielewski has about interior and exterior space, and the way that psychic space can be really vast and kind of all engulfing in a way that sometimes the like domestic space doesn't appear to be from the outside.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's not explicitly country, is it? The country house. You keep calling it country household house, but it's not. It's more an estate, isn't it? But anyway, what's got some short stories of yours. Go and visit some of them. A lot of them are published online as well, so you can treat yourself for some of those, and then you can also go buy a fantastically titled book, Parallel Hells, which is quite difficult for me to say. But what's coming next, Leon?
Well, after half a decade of living in Berlin, I finally got it together to write about Berlin.
All right,
So
right.
my next novel is called Better Halves currently, and it is about this lesbian couple who have a terrible breakup, and then one day they find themselves body swapped into each other's bodies. And they're trying to work out how to get back to their original state, but they still hate each other, so they don't want to cooperate.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. When's that coming out? When's
Well,
that?
that is in the lap of the gods.
Okay,
I'm working on it at the moment. I hope it finds a good home.
that sounds fantastic. Fantastic. Well, good luck with that.
Thank
Better Halves, brilliant. Good luck with that, and we are very excited to see that. But as you said, people wanted to speak to the upcoming talents, and that's what Rippling Pages listeners told me. So that's another reason to follow me on Instagram as well, Rippling_pages, and put a few polls out there sometimes. But it's been a really brilliant way to be introduced to Leon. And I've loved talking about the decadence. I've loved talking about hauntings and relationships in the country house, the English country house. But I think that is a good opportunity to bring our conversation to a close. The Decadence, published by Sceptre, it's out now. But otherwise, Leon Craig, thank you very much for joining me on the Ripping Pages.
you. It was a real joy to talk to you.